Hey guys, welcome to Mando's Mindset. As always, I'm your host, Amanda Russo, and I am here today with a very, very special guest. I am extra excited to be here with today's guest because personally, I see a lot of myself in this woman. She is a plant medicine facilitator, a breathwork facilitator, somatic coach, and she does it all. And I am here with Victoria Craig today. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. The second I found out you facilitated plant medicine and breathwork, I was like, you are like who I aspire to be, honestly. So I just love everything that you are doing, and I just want to share that with you.
Thank you so much. Honestly, it's a magical combination combining plant medicine and breath work. I mean, the the transformation, the healing that we experience through these together is it's mind blowing.
I know. No, I know. So, did you experience plant medicine or breathwork first?
Plant medicine. Yeah, ayahuasca. I went straight in to the deep end. Honestly, I didn't know much about psychedelics or ayahuasca. I just had this calling to it, which is often the way it comes through, and it kept coming kind of into my world, whether that was through podcasts I was listening to, or it'd pop up on social media, or I'd dream about it, or I even remember going on a date with a guy and he was talking about ayahuasca, and actually he'd never done it, but he wanted to, and I was the first to go. But yeah, I just had this calling, and I just decided I booked a flight to Peru, and I went into the Amazon jungle for a week, and the healing I experienced through that, the transformation, I guess the homecoming, like these medicines, especially ayahuasca, they show us who we are at the core, which is love, and they really help us to see that and feel that and build more self-love for ourselves. We go through life with so much self-judgment and self-blame, and that's probably one of the biggest things I got out of ayahuasca when I first went to do it. And then it wasn't much longer later when I was in India. That's when I had my first experience with conscious connected breath work, and I did five sessions, 5 journeys, day after, one day after the next, and with a guy they called the breath doc. And again, it's in some way similar, because we are, through plant medicine, through breath work, we're bypassing our conscious and our thinking mind. We're accessing the subconscious, the emotional body, the pain body, the limbic brain. So we can have some experiences that are quite similar through both. And one of the things I love about breath work as well is, plant medicine isn't for everyone, and not everyone's ready for it. And I have seen people go through breathwork journeys first, and then their calling has come, or they've said that right now I'm ready to experience plant medicine or ayahuasca, because they have less fear around it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. How long ago did you first try ayahuasca?
It was 5 years ago. So 5 years ago with both ayahuasca and breath work. And interestingly, with the breath work, I kind of knew then, this was what I wanted to do. I wouldn't say that with ayahuasca. I couldn't, if I look back to then, even a few years ago, I could never have imagined like this would be my life now. But with the breath work, the calling was so strong. But I think that's because it felt more accessible. It felt more like, okay, I can do this. And I still, when I first had my first experience with ayahuasca, I still didn't know an awful lot about it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned you felt the calling or the knowing.
Yeah.
Can you describe a little bit what that was like for you? Like how you knew?
Yeah, like I say, for me, it just kept coming into my world, whether that was through a podcast, through a book that I was reading, through social media, through people that I was meeting. And I mean, I didn't know anyone at that point that had done psychedelics. I was over in the UK. It was very taboo. It's still very much like you're going to do drugs. But it just kept coming into my world. And then like often as well with callings, we'll dream about it. Not always. But yeah, and then it was just a knowing, it was just a feeling like I have got to go and experience this. And I think, another side of it was having this note that for me, I felt like I needed a big experience. Like my life had to change, and I really wanted something that was going to almost catapult me in that direction. And that's what ayahuasca does. It is you come out of ayahuasca retreat or ceremony and you're not the same as you were. And we hear like you're a different person. I don't resonate so much with that, because that's almost like pushing away the past versions of ourselves. But you come out more evolved, more expanded, more understanding, clearer. We can resolve complete trauma cycles through ayahuasca and plant medicine, and through breath work as well. We can move a lot of energy from our body, whether that's related to trauma, whether that's emotional suppression that we've experienced. We pretty much all have experienced emotional suppression because we weren't taught how to really be with and express our emotions. We're taught good and bad, so the bad ones we push away, and we hold that energy in the body, and we're able to, I'd say ayahuasca and breath work taught me how to feel again. They really brought me into my body, out of my head and into my body, and in a safe space where I felt safe. It's safe for me to feel my emotions. It's safe for me to process these. And I guess the whole way I looked at life started to change, because also through plant medicine, we see the world in a way that we never have. We see that there is so much more to what we can actually see in this physical existence. You can travel dimensions during an ayahuasca journey. You can connect with ancestors, heal like ancestral generational trauma and wounding, connect with their gifts and their powers. We can connect with loved ones that have passed. And the things I'm saying here, this isn't what's going to happen for everyone. Everyone's journey and everyone's experience is different. But for me, one of the biggest pieces of healing is on my journey, I lost my mother. I've been through a lot of my own pain, trauma, and illness. And I actually lost my mother coming up to 10 years ago now, very suddenly. And at the same time, I was in an abusive relationship. And in a period of 6 weeks, because it got really hard when my mum passed, not having, being in an abusive relationship, not having someone that's actually there for you, but someone that's kind of knocking you down even more. And I decided to leave him because I desperately wanted to be with my father as well. And 2 days later, I found out I was pregnant. So in 6 weeks, I'd lost my mother. I went through a termination, and I left my fiance too. So my world completely shattered, and I had a lot of grief for losing my mother. And I also had a lot of grief for going through a termination. It's an incredibly difficult decision for any woman to make. And I did want children, but not in that environment. And one thing I will say now, thankfully, I made that decision because I now understand so much more about the first 7 years of a child's life, and how much the parents, the conditioning affects us, of whether we're brought up in a safe environment or not. But through my first experience with ayahuasca is I did so much healing and moving through the grief of the loss of terminating a pregnancy and the grief of losing my mother. Now, I will say with grief, especially, with my mom, I feel it's like a forever. It just lessens, I still have my moments where I grieve for my mother, but I'm not storing all of that grief, pain, shame, guilt, anger that I was, fear. Because when I personally feel grief is like, it's really all of the difficult emotions. You go through fear, whether that's, for me, it was fear of losing my father. Shame. I had shame for where I was in my life. I had shame that I didn't think I was a good enough daughter. I felt shame because I thought it should have been me and not my mum. You know, guilt that I wasn't, again, I didn't spend enough time with her. Guilt for my father's world falling apart. Anger, I couldn't believe she'd left me. How could she leave me? You know, so you go through all of these emotions during the process of grief. So it really is challenging. And I think it's really important that we have support, or we find support, whatever that looks like for us. And for me, the biggest healing was through ayahuasca and through breath work. And I was able to connect with my mother, and I was able to connect with her through meditation as well. But, you know, I know she's here with me. You know, she comes in every now and then and she talks to me, and that's generally through a breathwork journey or through an Aya journey. She's there with me, and it makes that grieving process so much easier, because you know their soul is still there watching over.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you for the space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to backtrack a little bit, but I like how you mentioned how plant medicine isn't for everybody. Because I feel like you got a lot of sides of either the stigma and it's super bad and it's drugs, or you have a lot of people strongly pushing it. And I agree with that, though, that it's not for everybody. And I even think breathwork is a great way to get into a similar state without having to do psychedelics. You know, because even some people have fear around just knowing what that is. You know, like I've done ayahuasca before, but it's interesting when you mention the call-in, because when I had first heard about it, I was against it. My boyfriend at the time was going through a ceremony. He wanted me to go with him, and we got in a huge argument because I was like, I'm a paralegal. You think I'm gonna do drugs in the woods? And a year and a half later, I went and did ayahuasca at the same place with the same type of ceremony. And I completely agree with it being that calling, because I was so against it. But I had done mushrooms, but you hear ayahuasca and it's like, oh, now that's a serious thing. So I'm like, I ain't doing that. Like I'm too prestige for that.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, time passed. I started hearing more about it. I started seeing it on social media. I'm like, maybe I should research this a little bit. And again, I had a lot of fear going into mine. I didn't tell anybody I was doing ayahuasca. I told everyone I was going on a yoga retreat and did ayahuasca.
My dad.
I told my mom the same thing. She's like, oh, a yoga retreat? It's that far away? Yep. Yoga.
We do this with art. So I host the soul rising retreats, which is plant medicine, breath work, and feminine embodiment and sisterhood. Obviously, ayahuasca is one of the medicines that we use in that. But this is something we always come up with when women join, and it's like, you know, what do I tell people? What do I tell my family? And I'm always like, will that really feel into how you feel they're going to receive it? Because we've had women that they're like, I tell my mum everything and she knows this is what I'm going to do. And then there's other people that like, you know, my family that are very much the same, the Matrix. They know what I do now and they're completely supportive of it, but it would not have been received. So it's like, what's the safest thing for you that's not going to take away from your experience? Because I've seen it as well with partners before as well. It's a little bit different with a partner if you're going on a retreat, but you know, I've seen it where partners have turned on their their spouses because they're not comfortable with them going and doing ayahuasca and thinking that it's drugs. But I do feel that education is such an important piece, and that's part of what I'm here to do, is educate people. You know, these are medicines. And it, like we say, it's not for everyone, and some people just don't feel ready for it now. They may in the future, but also there is safety concerns as well. So we have to understand someone's mental, physical, and emotional health before having them come and sit with the medicine. But they are medicines, and I think we've come so far. Since I first did ayahuasca to now, we've come so far with plant medicine in general. There's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of people pushing it. There's a lot of advocates. There's also a lot of celebrities that are advocates of plant medicine. I was actually listening to a podcast last night, a Jay Shetty podcast. I don't know if you know him, with Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife, and she said ayahuasca saved her life. She was suicidal, and she had tried absolutely everything. And it was when she sat with ayahuasca. Since she sat with ayahuasca, she's never thought about suicide again. Yeah.
Wow, I got chills at that.
Yeah. It was a really powerful listen. I'm now like, I need to get her book because she's written a book.
Wow, I'll have to listen to that podcast. No, I believe that though. And I love how you mentioned about the education about it, because even at the time when my boyfriend had been like, let's go do an ayahuasca ceremony, I had no idea what even it was. I knew it was some type of psychedelic that you drink. That was the extent. So I was like, what, you want me to drink something in the woods and puke? Like, that's what I knew. So I think it's so important to do your research, educate yourself on what it actually is before ego, I kind of want to call it ego, is getting in the way. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly that. The one thing I will say though is I never recommend anyone goes down a rabbit hole on Google, because what you often end up doing is reading other people's experiences, and often people, if they haven't had a great experience, or if someone is they don't believe in these medicines, you might be reading the wrong thing, which can actually put fear within you. But this is where I like listen to podcasts, follow social media accounts that advocate and are very open and honest about the experiences through the medicine, the good, the bad, the highs and the lows, because an ayahuasca journey is a journey, and it doesn't mean it's all going to be love and light, because she has, and I say she, it's a feminine energy. The grandmother, often people refer to her as, she has the energy. I feel a little bit like tower moments in tarot, like tower moments in life where everything's falling down around you that's not in alignment. She's really good at kind of showing you that. So that could be, and again, everyone's experience is different. Some people have journeys which are just love and light, but we do see more. It takes you to face maybe the parts of yourself that you haven't met, the parts of yourself that haven't been healed, in a very loving way, to be able to then release those and make shifts, transitions, and changes in your life to come more into alignment with who you authentically are, which is it's really beautiful. But it's important that people know that you can have challenging moments and challenging times and journeys. For us in the Soul Rising, the way we hold this space, it's very loving, it's very compassionate. Everything and all of you is welcome. But if anyone is going through a challenging time in a journey, we're right there by their side. We're supporting them, and we have the tools to help them move through that, and to know that in that experience they are safe. And for me with Aya, and I've had some wild journeys, but I have this thing in my mind where I just always say to myself, this is temporary and this shall pass, and it does. But she's just just an incredible medicine to help us come home to ourselves and to our truth, and to, for me, after I did my first ayahuasca retreat, that's when I actually decided, okay, I'm leaving the UK. I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to start helping people. I'm going to create this business. And I look back and I'm like, would I have done that? And I'd had for years, like, my dreams of travel and working for myself and being an entrepreneur and making an impact. And every new year I'd start and then I'd give up, because I didn't have that belief in myself to do it. And since then I haven't, 5 years on, and I live in Mexico now. I host retreats in Mexico. I've built this beautiful business. I'm not going to say it's all easy, it's not, but would I change it? No. I have so much more freedom in my life than I ever could have imagined. Now I can't imagine living back in the UK. For me, it would feel like living in a box and being trapped.
No, I don't get that. I love how you mentioned, though, not going down the rabbit hole, because I think it's easy to do that. There definitely has to be a balance, with doing some of your research, not just Googling everything, but not just going off of assumptions, kind of like I did when I had first heard of ayahuasca, and all I knew was it's some kind of drink, you do it in the woods, and it's psychedelic. That's what I did.
Honestly, sometimes I think that's like the best way. That's very similar to how I did it, because I also then didn't go in with expectations. And we always invite people. It's really important to have intention. We're doing this in a ceremonial, a sacred setting. The power of intention is just incredible. And I've seen so many women, their intentions have been met through the medicine. However, if you go in with expectations, you're opening yourself up to disappointment. And, we could have an intention to heal something or to change something within us, but maybe there's something underneath that needs to be seen first, that needs to be met first. So you may be taken there. You don't want to then feel disappointed that you didn't get what you want. Because what happens with these medicines, and with ayahuasca, was that she will give you what you need, not necessarily what you want.
No, I agree. I completely agree that she will give you what you need and not necessarily what you want. It's interesting because I had done some more research just to have like a little bit of an idea, because honestly, I had a lot of fear, especially with, if anything happens, everyone thinks I'm at a yoga retreat and I'm not actually at a yoga retreat. But I really like how you mentioned going into it without expectations, because I think that sets a lot of people up for failure. And you hear about people having negative experiences, but I think if you go into it with, this is what I'm going to get out of it, like, I didn't have hardly any visuals. Like, I thought about every experience that I've ever had in my life, but it wasn't really like seeing things. Whereas some of the people that I was there with didn't have that either, and they were disappointed at that. And I didn't go into it thinking I'm going to see these crazy things. Even my intention was pretty broad. I was like, I wrote Grandmother Aya a letter before I left to go, and
I love that.
my main intention was to show me whatever I needed to see, whether I wanted to see it or I didn't want to see it. To show me what I needed to see, and I saw every single, even experiences I didn't remember I had, like small ones, big ones, and I journaled in a whole notebook. I wrote like 80 pages of like journaling and just processed so much.
And I think, that's such an beautiful intention to have, because your intention is going to be met that way. And I think, you mentioned something about, people having negative experiences. And I feel that it's really the way we frame negative, because often someone's negative experience is because they've had a hard time. They've not understood it or had the support to understand what was happening and why they were experiencing that. And this is where, I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. Firstly, if you're choosing to go and sit with ayahuasca, if you're choosing to go to a retreat, is do the research on where you're going, who you're going to be sitting with, connect with them. So for us, once someone applies for the retreat, they have a call with me, they have a connection call. So obviously I can answer any questions. I can go deeper into how we lead ceremony, how we run ceremony, the whole retreat experience, because there's a lot more we do a lot of work around like the feminine and feminine embodiment as well in our retreat too. Also for energies to connect, I want any woman that's coming into our space to feel that she knows a little bit about me, to feel that she has some trust and feels safe coming in with me and my team. And then, and I stay in touch with the women all the way leading up to the retreat. Also in that call, it's very important to understand what's the onboarding process of where you're going. How thorough are they going into like mental, emotional, and physical health? Because there are contraindications. There's certain health conditions, there's certain medications that it's not safe to sit with ayahuasca or other medicines. So, seeing what that process is, if you feel any discomfort around that onboarding process, or that there's not much of one, that for me is a red flag. And then when we come out of the retreat or when we come out of ceremony, is there support available for you to understand what you have experienced, if there's anything you're not clear on, and to be able to integrate and process that experience too? Because the integration process it's a process, and it can be long. I've done ayahuasca ceremonies where a year and a half later I had an aha moment. I was like, oh my gosh, I get it now. I understand what that experience was trying to show me. And I feel having, professional support is a really big piece. Again, with us, after the retreat, we have integration circles. During our retreat, we have integration circles and sharing circles after every ceremony. And then one-on-one support is available during that time as well. If anyone wants to come and sit with me and go through their experience and have a little bit more support and have space held for them. And then afterwards, that we support the women through. And it's not just we support the women, they support each other, because what we're forming is lifelong sisterhoods through these retreats, because you're going into a space where every other woman's on the same journey as you. And as you're changing and evolving, they're changing and evolving. And then you come out the other side, and it doesn't mean that life's going to be perfect and we're not going to have challenges. We still do, but having people there to support you. And actually, while I'm on integration, so, an example of how an integration process could be challenging. So we've and I've had it quite recently actually with a woman that came in, really, really beautiful woman. She was in a relationship's not aligned. I would say emotionally, mentally abusive, not physically. Has kind of she'd lost herself in this relationship. And then there was a part of her that knew, but there was a part of her that wasn't ready to face that. Because there's children involved. So, it's scary. But through the ceremony, she was able to find this depth of self-love that she'd never experienced, and to see how that relationship was blocking her and not in alignment, almost to the point where she's like, I can't continue ignoring it. So she's come out, and then there's a split happening. That's not going to be an easy process, because if you're breaking up with your partner, it's going to be challenging. It leads to magic, but you still, through that integration process, you're still facing challenges. We might see this where other relationships or friendships may not be aligned, and we come out, we're like, okay, that's not aligned for me. Or someone's like, okay, the job I'm doing or my career is not fulfilling me, and I can't ignore it anymore. So they then have a journey, or we often have women come and they realize actually they've got a bigger purpose. They're meant to make an impact and help people, and they want to, take the entrepreneurial journey, but that's not an easy journey. So it's really important that you understand that. And this is something I share with everyone, during their onboarding with us and during the retreat. But you understand that, and you have the support available. And I also recommend, it's great to work with a therapist afterwards as well. I recommend a psychedelic therapist, or having a therapist that has experienced plant medicine, because they'll have a deeper understanding of what you're going through. And I have seen it where people's therapists have not been very supportive of them going and doing plant medicine. So it's important, whoever you work with, it's the right person to help you on your journey.
No, that makes so much sense. And I love how you mentioned doing research on where you are attending a ceremony, because I think that is so crucial. Because I think the integration before and after is just something that is so needed, because I obviously can't speak for everyone, but my specific group of people that I went to my ceremony with, we all had so many big challenges post the retreat. Like there was a big integration beforehand, but post retreat, I wouldn't say it was as high quality as it could have been, because a lot of big things came up. And I love how you mentioned that you're not necessarily a new person, but you're looking at the world in a new way. Like a lot of big things happen. Like everybody has a different journey, but I quit my job spur of the moment post ayahuasca with no plan. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I just walked into my boss's office a month and a half after doing ayahuasca, and I was like, I gotta go. He's like, you gotta go where? And I was like, I'm leaving. This isn't working. I've never done anything like that in my life. And he's like, what's not working? I was like, this job, me being here, I'm sorry, but this is not gonna work. I'll work the rest of the day, but this is not it. And even in the moment of
She gives you courage.
exactly.
It is really important to have support, and I feel personally that is a really big piece that's missing from the plant medicine space is integration support. So this is why it's something that we have included in our retreats, because also, it's not just about the retreat experience. I want that transformation to continue for all of the women that come in. And it's easy, you said something about you see the world in a different way, but it doesn't mean that everyone around you when you go home sees the world the same way that you do. That can be a challenge, and that can be a challenge in itself. And just old patterns, for example, can creep in. Okay, the parts of me, the old me, shadows can come up, insecurities can come up, which is very normal. But having the support to not slip back or stay back, because we're very good at self-blame and judgment. So it's like we take a step back and we think we failed. Well, no, if you took 10 steps forward and you've taken 2 steps back, you're still way ahead. And then you can leap ahead again. So it's so important that we give that support for us, for the women that are coming in. And we've formed the most beautiful connections and relationships. One of our groups, actually from August last year, we have a WhatsApp group, and that group, it's not as busy as it was, but every now and then it's just popping off with love and support, and they're holding space for each other. Obviously we're there to hold space too, but they're holding the space for each other, and that is so beautiful and so needed.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious, as a plant medicine facilitator, why do you think integration is so lacking?
I've thought about this a lot, and one of the things I've come up with, so for example, I trained with Shipibo shamans in the Amazon jungle in Peru, and incredible humans, incredibly gifted. They live a completely different life. They live in the jungle, in community. They're very disconnected from the matrix. They don't experience what we experience. So I even look at it, I'm like, well, would they be the right people to help us integrate? For them, integration is just their life. So that's one of the reasons. And then I just feel there's a lack of maybe consideration for what people experience after ayahuasca journeys. You know, you can, and depending where you go, I know there's ceremonies here, and I've been to them as well, where it might be 30, 40, 50 people in a Moloko. They're one-off ceremonies, in and out. That's just the model of the way they work. Integration isn't something that they include or they support with. But this is where it's, because those ceremonies, well, I can go into those ceremonies myself because I've done so much plant medicine. I know integration. I wouldn't recommend it for someone that's new to this, but I think this is where it's just important for, I don't want to blame, you know, facilitators or people holding the space, but it's important for the participant to be educated and to be asking these questions and to go where feels like it's the right fit and the right space for them. And if integration support is key, then they want to go somewhere that offers that. The other thing is then, you know, integration is our responsibility, and this is something I've battled with a little bit myself, because I realized at the beginning of the retreats, I've almost felt that their integration was my responsibility. But it's not. That's me taking the power away from them. This wasn't a conversation I was having, but there was a part of me that would feel that if I wasn't fully supporting them through integration, then if they didn't get what they wanted, then that was my fault, which is not true at all, because integration for all of us is our own responsibility. And there is support. You could go into a retreat where, you know, let's say, for example, you go into the Amazon jungle in Peru. Integration is likely not going to be, not for everywhere, but a lot of places, there's not going to be any integration post the retreat. They'll help you integrate while you're there. So this is where you go and you get a psychedelic therapist or a psychedelic coach or someone that can then help you if you need that support. You know, I think it's very easy to blame, but when you sign up, you know what you're signing up for. You know, you're told it. If someone has a website, it will tell you what's included in your experience. And if integration isn't part of that, that's what you've agreed to go and do. So I feel we have to really take responsibility for ourselves. For me, you know, the women that come into our space are often very sensitive women. They're very empathic. A lot of them are new to psychedelics, especially ayahuasca. Actually, most people have probably tried some mushrooms, or, you know, occasionally we have someone that hasn't done any psychedelics. But they come to us for a reason, because they maybe connect with me and my story. They resonate with my energy. I'm living in the jungle because I'm in Tulum now, but I'm in a very beautiful apartment in Tulum. You know, I live more of a similar life to them and have understandings of what they experience. We also hold a very sensitive and a safe and trauma sensitive space in our ceremonies. We do things slightly, you know, differently. A lot of ayahuasca ceremonies, you will be in the pitch black, right? You know, and that for some people can be scary itself. Whereas with us, it's, you know, it's not pitch black, it's not light, but it's not, you know, you're not completely in the dark. You can orientate and you're kind of aware of what's going on around you. And then, like, if someone's going through a challenging experience, we're right there with them. Even if someone's like, they're feeling a little bit scared and they just want you to sit with them, either myself or my team will sit with them. If someone they're going through something challenging and they don't understand it, or they just need to voice it, we're often able to give them a different perspective and help them understand what they're experiencing, which then lets them let go of fear. So I'll give you an example here. I've had she's actually a very close friend of mine now as well. She came to one of our retreats last year, and her first night with Aya, she was in her head. She was just really stuck in her head and in her mind, and her mind was going crazy. And we were offering the second serving, and she came up and she was just like, she broke down. And I was like, talk to me, what's happening? And she explained, she's like, my mind is going crazy. I can't just stop all of these thoughts. And, you know, I just want it to stop. And I just said, what's your mind like in day-to-day life? And she just went, oh my gosh, this is what my mind is doing to me daily. So that's what ayahuasca was trying to show her. It was amplifying what she's experiencing in day-to-day life with the monkey mind and the critique and the blame. And as soon as she had that like awareness, the resistance that she was experiencing left her body and her journey completely changed. We look out for, we're aware of like different trauma responses that we can go into. Most of us have experienced trauma, maybe on different levels, but we've got when the nervous system's activated in survival, we've got our fight, flight, freeze, and then I'm going to include fawn in that as well. Fawn, for example, is, when we kind of shut down, we go into appeasing and a pleasing. Maybe we can't use our voice, we can't stand up for ourselves, we can't speak up. We just completely shut ourselves down. And we realize this in ceremony with all women, where one thing women are really good at, they wanted some help, they were maybe a little bit scared, they wanted someone to come and help them or speak to them, but they were like, no, my process isn't big enough, someone else is going through something harder. So they would stay in whatever they're in and feel like they had to deal with it alone. And at the time, they were just unable to speak up. What they'd had happen is they've gone into fawn. So we have these little night lights, these little purple night lights. And if someone's experiencing that, they really want to help, but they want someone to come and be with them for a few minutes, and they can't, they just don't have the courage, or their voice, they just can't use their voice. They just flip their night light on. One of us sees it, we're there.
That's beautiful. I love how you got creative with that. To think of, no, because that's so, that makes so much sense. That is, especially that at times you could, because I even myself, not during my Aya experience, but at times just had that reluctancy of, I don't want to be a burden or a bother, or somebody else needs something more than I do, so I'll wait.
Well, we have been conditioned to put everyone else's needs ahead of ourselves as women. The oppression, the suppression of women, we've been brought up, most of us, as people pleasers. Everyone else matters before us. We've not been brought up to use our voice, to speak up. We've been brought up to be quiet and look pretty, so like having it affects all women in different ways. We have to be aware of, okay, what things come up for specifically women? Comparison. My journey's not as deep as theirs. I'm not puking in a bucket, but I'm really scared of what I'm experiencing. Because you're not puking in a bucket doesn't mean your experience is any less than. And we're very good at lessening what we are experiencing. And I don't mean this just in medicine, I mean this in life.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I want to backtrack a little bit, but you talked about feminine embodiment. What does that mean to you?
Okay, so my definition of feminine embodiment is being connected to our feminine body, essence, and energy. It's a state of living in our body over living in our head. Women, we're not small men. Men have a body clock of day and night, and they have consistent energy, productivity, focus pretty much every day. Women, we are cyclical beings. Okay, so we go through 4 seasons in a month, the 4 seasons of our cycle. So our inner winter is our bleed phase, our inner spring is our follicular phase, summer will be our ovulation, and then winter will be our luteal phase. Our hormones, our energy, our emotions are ever changing and evolving through that cycle. Most women are disconnected from their body and from their cycle, which can lead to burnout, lead to health issues, depression, anxiety, multiple things. But feminine embodiment is a state of living in our body and being connected to our body and what's happening in our body, allowing our body to be our inner guidance rather than our mind. Men, or the masculine, but men, they are very logical thinkers, logical processing, and that works. That's their strength for them. For women, our strength is in our body and our intuition. It's not to say we don't logically process as well, but our strength is in our body and in our intuition. Our intuition for me lives in our body, those gut feelings, those sensations, that inner knowing. And I always ask anyone when it comes to intuition, look at what happens if you've ignored your intuition. Whether that's you stayed in a relationship that wasn't serving you, it didn't get better, it got worse, right? Because your intuition, your body's trying to tell you something. We are emotional. Yeah. Now, when I say emotional, I'm not saying emotionally unstable, but we experience emotions in a very different way. And like I say, they are changing and evolving throughout the month. But we have been oppressed and suppressed. We've been taught good and bad emotions. As a woman, it's bad to be angry. You do not express it. I used to always say I'm not an angry person. And no, I just didn't know how to express my anger. I pushed it down as far as I could. But it's a natural human emotion, and we get to look at the healthy, being able to find safety in our emotions, being able to go into them, feel them, and express them, because then we can move through them very quickly, but also in a healthy way, healthy expression of emotion. So anger, we often think of anger as aggression, different thing. You can scream into a pillow, you can get in your bed, you can have a temper tantrum, you can use your breath, you can use your voice. There's ways for us to express anger where it is not aggression and it is not a projection onto anyone else. So for me, the key things for the feminine is that being connected to our body. When we're dysregulated, or a sign of dysregulation is also often when we're living in our head. When I say dysregulation, like our nervous system's dysregulated. We want to be able to be in our body to understand what's happening, what feelings, what emotions, what sensations am I experiencing. So we need to find safety in living in our body, because also living in our head can be an effect of trauma, because we no longer feel safe in our body. So for me, that's really what the feminine is about. And during our retreats, we go into like the understanding the nervous system, the signs of dysregulation, what's a regulated nervous system, how that's going to impact your life either way, whether it's dysregulated or regulated. How do we connect with our emotions and find safety in our emotions? And this is where the medicines really support. They kind of we bypass that conscious thinking mind, and they take you into a place where you feel and you express and you release. We have a womb healing workshop as well, so we're actually connecting to the power of our womb and to our female body. Our womb is a really powerful portal, and not just a physical organ, but energetically that space. We as women, we can bring souls from the universe into human form. I mean, that's just insane, but it's our place of creation, abundance. So really connecting women back to their body, connecting women back to their cycle. That's a huge piece of the retreat. And also, when women are very disconnected, it's helping them find ways to get into balance with their cycle. Because if we look at the bleed phase, right, this is where our energy is generally the lowest. We might be feeling a little bit more fatigue. We're more inward focused. It's like, this is cocoon time. This is maybe eat a little bit more food and cocoon and watch Netflix. It's not the most social time of the month for us. It's often a time, as we're going into that back end of the luteal phase, where maybe PMS is kicking in. However, extreme PMS symptoms are not normal. We should be able to really move through that phase very easily. But again, we've been taught that like PMS is just part of it. But this is where often our insecurities, our shadows come up that we haven't met. It's a really key time that we can learn so much about ourselves. For me, I used to get imposter syndrome every single time. A lot of women are pushing through that. So maybe they're going to the gym and doing heavy workouts, drinking lots of caffeine. They've got a big work and social schedule as well. So all of these impact our our cycle. And then, as we're in the spring, our energy is going to start to increase, our workouts can change, maybe the food we're going to eat is going to be different, we're going to start to feel more social. And then ovulation, sex drive is high, energy at its highest, it's summertime, it's like I want to be out. When you're very disconnected to your cycle, you're probably not going to have that flow, which I've experienced. I've experienced myself, because we're so out of whack, and obviously our hormones are often all over the place. So it's like, what are little steps that we can take to start to reconnect with our cycle and balance the body out and reconnect with our feminine body energy and essence. When a woman's in her, like, really living in her body and in her feminine energy, she is magnetic. And actually a big part that, if we look at masculine and feminine energies, and we have both and we need both, the feminine is the being, the masculine is the doing, the productivity, the output, the force, the focus. How often do women let themselves rest? We look at women working multiple jobs, bringing up children. Often I see this with women with children that, they're working a full-time job, and they're the one that's predominantly bringing up the children, taking them to school and back, cooking the meals, cleaning the house. It's trying to do both of the roles. So when do we actually allow? I couldn't let myself rest. When just before I started this journey, I was working like 5 jobs at one point, and I was like, okay, well, I need to have this much money, and I need to do this, and I need to be successful. I was competing in fitness and bikini competitions. I had eating disorders, body dysmorphia. I would be up at 4 a.m. I would be going to the gym twice a day. I would be weighing and measuring all my food. My day was gym, work, food prep, gym, sleep. So it's like, where do we allow that time to just be and let our body rest?
No, that's so true. I want to transition a little bit, but I know you just mentioned you competed in bodybuilding, and that was your life. Gym was meal prepping, and gym again. That was me for a long time. But I saw on your Instagram how you posted about how you became more conscious post bodybuilding. I'd love if you could elaborate on how.
Really, when I started my healing journey is when I became more conscious, and incorporating in that healing journey the feminine embodiment journey, because a big piece of that was actually connecting with and learning how to love my body. When I was competing, I'm not gonna lie, there was parts of it that I loved. At the time I really did enjoy it, no matter how hard I was pushing myself. But I was, I had body dysmorphia, I had eating disorders, and then learning through this healing journey to actually love my body for what it is, without having to constantly feel it needs to be smaller, I need to change it, I need to have a tiny waist, I need to weigh a certain amount, be on the scales every day. Through the medicines, big, for me, that's been a big shift in becoming more conscious, because what they bring to us is awareness. Okay, what's happening within me? What are the patterns that are playing out that maybe a part of us knows, but we just don't want to face, or we're pushing it away. I also got very sick. I had autoimmune disease and disorder. I got very, very unwell. I had alopecia. I lost 3/4 of my hair. I had surgery. I had implants. I had those removed. Severe gastrointestinal issues, chronic fatigue, bowel prolapse, pelvic inflammatory disease, amenorrhea. You name it. Like, it was just one thing after another, and I couldn't not be aware. I had to, I have such bad, I had to stop, I had to slow down. And, just really through this healing journey, I've woken up to what was going on inside of me, to why I was doing all of the things that I was doing, which was ultimately self-abuse in many ways, and to really getting clear on, like, who do I want to be, and how do I want to move through this life. And I always say I'm an open book. I'm still a work in progress. You know, I may host retreats and ceremonies. I love the work I do when I get to hold space for women, but I'm still on my journey as well, because I really feel like it's a forever journey. You know, we're always unpeeling layers. We face life challenges, but we face them in different ways. We have moments and times where things are really difficult, and then we have moments and times when things are incredible. And I don't believe in the separation, that I'm in a different place than anyone else. Like, we are all on this journey together. And also in the work that I do in retreats, that's a big piece that creates more safety, because there's no pedestals, you know. We're all here, we're all doing this work together. I just happen to be the one that is holding the space. And I have the knowledge, the understanding of the training to do that, and to help you through your own journey, and to be able to maybe see what you can't see in that moment.
No, that makes so much sense. Wow, that's awesome. Now, these illnesses that you got, when did they come in terms of your healing journey and your plant medicine experiences?
So it was actually after I'd first done ayahuasca. It was just during the pandemic. I left India, I went back to the UK. Kind of dreams were being shattered at that time. I had things come up with my family. You know, I definitely felt, you know, I had like abandonment wounds really reactivated. I found myself trying to find somewhere to live in the UK. You know, I'd just been living in India for, you know, $600 a month. And I was still early on in my entrepreneurial journey. And I started to get sick. But I also, when I went back to UK, I started going to old patterns of like, I'm just going to drink all the coffee, I'm just going to work all the time. You know, there's the pandemic, there's nothing else to do. And my body just started to, I guess, shut down in many ways. You know, it did feel like my body was attacking itself, and I really spiraled during that time. But also, what I did come to learn further on in my journey, and it's you know, it's through breathwork, through the medicines. I had unresolved, repressed trauma. And, you know, you go, well, why didn't I heal that to begin with? Because I wasn't ready. And this still took a long time to come through, because I actually had sexual trauma, and I had to create the safety in my body for me to be able to go there. You know, the body's very intelligent. This is something I repressed for 12 years. I didn't remember. I completely blocked them out because I didn't feel safe to go there. And once I'd created that safety, then with the help of the medicines and the breath work, it came through, and I was able to do the healing and, you know, complete the trauma cycles around what had happened to me. And I will say, you know, with autoimmune, it can be a long journey of healing. You know, I still have. I mean, I'm so much better than I was. My hair's been growing like crazy recently. It's healthy to have bald patches here. You know, I look very healthy. I've made so many shifts in my own body. You know, I have my cycle back, connected to my cycle. I don't experience migraines anymore. But I do get flare-ups every now and then. And what tends to be underneath those is stress. So what I've really been able to see is the effect of stress and the impact that stress has on our body. Also with autoimmune, we there's a lot of work in balancing the nervous system and being able to get in, you know, really activate that parasympathetic part of the nervous system, the rest and digest, that okay, I'm safe in my body, I'm safe in the world. But there's also a journey of building your capacity and your sympathetic, which is the fight, flight, freeze response, to be able to manage stress. So it's a journey I'm still on, but the flare-ups are few and far between now, and I have the support to, you know, to move through them. And they're not like, I mean, I was at absolute rock bottom when, you know, my hair was falling out. I had surgery because I had implants. I had them removed in case that was impacting me. And I was in this place of absolutely loathing my body. I had this scarring. I was gaining weight. You know, I had the migraines. I mean, chronic fatigue was just every, you know, you think tomorrow's going to be a better day, and it never was. You know, severe. I ate the same meal for 100 days at one point, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know, now the variety of what I can eat is much bigger. There's still restrictions. Things like gluten don't work for me. Dairy doesn't work for me. Processed sugar doesn't work for me. Caffeine doesn't work for me. But I'm okay with those.
You know what? Wow. I really like how you mentioned it's a journey, and you know we're all on the journey. Like no one's further along or on a pedestal than anybody else. We're just all progressing along and trying to improve ourselves as best.
I think if we see someone that we feel is, I used to be so good at putting people on pedestals, and it really did not do me any good. But if we see someone that maybe we're inspired by, it's like that is come into your sphere because it's showing you what is available for you.
It's showing you what's available for you.
You know, I see this in, like, for me, I'm single, and I would love to be in a relationship. That's something that I really want to call in. And recently, my best friend Johanna, who supports in the retreats as well, she's just, I mean, we met at the beginning of this journey. We met in India on a yoga teacher training together, and we've really done this journey together. But she's the other side of the world. She lives in Ibiza. I'm here, but she was out in Mexico with me for a retreat, and she was out with me for a month. Her partner came out, and they spent a week together. And he's from Germany, and I got to meet him. And I felt like I knew this man because I knew so much about him, but I got to meet him and just witness them together. And it was like, okay, well, I could be jealous of this, or I could be like, wow, this is what's available for me. Because being able to see them together, they had such a beautiful relationship and connection. I was like, this is really inspiring. Then it, you know, showing us that true love is out there and showing us that there are some really good men.
Wow, I love that you compared like the two different ways you could have looked at that. Like it's beautiful for the jealousy aspect.
Yeah.
I love that. All about that mindset perspective shift.
Yeah, it's rather than why don't I have that? Well, this is available for me. You know, and I think those perspective shifts are really important. And what I will say, you know, if you're having a really challenging time, you know, when someone's like, look on the bright side or be positive, you just want to tell them where to go. I think you get to honor that piece as well of being in that, you know, we call like victim, right? And I've been there myself many times and I still occasionally go there. But it's like, I get to honor feeling like that, but I don't have to stay there. That's the key. It's not staying in that place, because we ultimately, if we're there, we are completely blocking ourselves, you know, because like attracts like, energy attracts energy, everything is energy, right? So if I'm miserable all the time and I'm depressed and I'm like, this has happened to me, and I'm playing kind of victim, then I'm going to attract more people, more experiences into my life that amplify that. But if I can just start to shift a little bit from that, I might first go in and out and in and out, then I'm going to start to see things in my outside world. So it's as I shift my inner world, my outside world starts to shift.
I love that. As I shift my energy, I love that. And I love how you mentioned not staying in it. Like something I've heard before was you need to feel it in order to heal it. Because I've tended to be the type that would either express it and not feel it at all, or feel it too much and not have like the balance.
Yeah.
It's like allowing yourself to feel it, but not staying in it. Like it's okay to have the grief, to have the emotions, but not letting it take you over.
And I think, yeah, exactly that. And if it feels too overwhelming for you, reach out for support, whether that's to friends or family or for professional support. You know, we all get to be held in our own pain, in our own suffering. You know, it's something I I'm working, actually, I've got a session today. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm actually working with a couple, a Chinese medicine doctor and a body worker. So we're kind of touching everything: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Because I had a flare up with autoimmune from chronic stress. I had a very painful experience last year that I realized I haven't fully gotten over, and I have support, got great people in my life. I was like, I need to be somewhere with people that do not know me. I need to be able to just let all of my walls down and be supported in a different way. I need to be supported by someone that is professional. So, in my work, I hold a lot of women, and I get to be held too. But also, some people would feel shame. It's like in the work that I do, well, why am I getting professional help? It's really strong and courageous to do that. And also, the more work I do on myself, the better I can be for the women that I support. And just because I do this work, it doesn't mean that I'm not here having the same human experience that everyone else is. We have challenges, we have lessons, we have hard times, we experience grief, loss, pain, trauma. That no one is, what's the word, susceptible? No, what's the word I'm looking for here? No one gets a pass on all of that.
No, it's so
No
true.
matter who you are.
We're all human. We're all human, and we all feel the same emotions, even if it's from different experiences. We all feel sadness at times. We all feel anger at times, even if it's for a different reason.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're maybe a monk sat on a cliff top meditating all day, then maybe things are a bit different. But most of us don't feel called to that life.
No, that's so true. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me and being on Amanda's Mindset. I really appreciate it. Now, I typically end my podcast with two segments. And it's kind of funny that you mentioned Jay Shetty earlier because I got these two segments from him and how he ends his podcast. I don't know if he's done it on all of them, but he's done it on quite a few. And the first segment is called The Many Sides to Us. And it's 5 questions that have to be answered in one word each.
He says 1 or 5 words, up to 5. Or is that Lewis Howes? They do the same thing.
I'm not sure.
Let's try for 1 word.
What is one word someone who is meeting you for the first time would use to describe you?
Soft.
Number 2. What is one word that someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you?
Compassionate.
Number 3. What is one word you'd use to describe yourself?
Ooh, this is a tough one. Strong.
Number 4. What is one word that if someone didn't agree with you or your mindset, how would they describe you?
Oh, wow. Crazy.
Number 5. What is one word you're trying to embody right now?
Peace.
Okay. Now he has what he calls the final 5, and these can be answered in a sentence.
Okay.
What is the best advice you've heard or received?
Wow. The best. Just keep going.
Okay. Number 2. What is the worst advice you've heard or received?
Stop resisting, surrender. And that was in a plant medicine journey at my first time. And you don't know you're in resistance and you've never experienced surrender. So it really wasn't helpful.
No, I agree. And you probably didn't even know what that meant by you're resisting. Did you?
I had no idea. I was like, what? Yeah, it did not help. Just a little text around that.
Number 3, what is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
Patriarchal standard and societal standard of what is beautiful.
Okay. If you could describe what you would want your legacy to be, as if someone were reading it, what would you want it to say?
She never gave up, and she turned her pain into purpose and made an impact in the world.
Okay. Number 5, if you could create one law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be? And I want to know why.
Oh, wow. This is a tough one. One law in the world. To pause and breathe before they react. And that's because so much conflict happens because people are like, they don't take that time to like breathe and process and understand what is happening or why they are triggered before responding or reacting to something that's happened. And I believe if we all did that, there'd be a lot less conflict in the world.
I love that. I love how you mentioned that. I completely agree. I think taking like even just one deep breath in before you do something, before you make a decision, like will change your complete state.
There was one, I'm just going to have to throw this in there because obviously I've been listening to a lot of Jay Shetty, and one, I was really cool to listen to an interview with James Corden because I went to school with James Corden. He was from my little village in the middle of nowhere in the UK. He was a few years older than me. I didn't know him, but I was like, I just got to listen to this. And he answers that question at the end, and he says that the amount of time you spend on social media, you then get like banned from it for that amount. So if you're on social media for 5 minutes, you can't go on social media for 5 minutes. If you're on it for an hour, you can't go on it for an hour.
Oh my God.
That is brilliant.
Ah, that's interesting. Now I have one last question for you. Can you share with us some of the resources that you utilize in your everyday life to help you remain successful?
Yeah, so big ones for me, movement, breath, and sound. I have a daily yoga practice. I mean, it changes. It's very intuitive. Just moving my body, moving energy through my body. That really helps me to regulate, connecting with my breath. At times meditating. I don't, if my mind is very busy, I don't try and meditate because I often wind myself up more. Music, listening to music, dancing, shaking my body, plant medicine, even microdosing. That's something that really helps me when I go through the times of microdosing. I don't microdose all the time every day. I'd say journaling, but I'm not as much of a journaler now as I used to be. For me, it's really stuff that's within my body. Going for walks is a big one. Getting out, movement is a big one for me. Getting out in nature, moving my body, connecting with friends, speaking to my best friend on the phone.
Nice. Okay, that's awesome. Now, where can the listeners connect with you and how can they get in touch with you?
Okay, so I always love to connect with other women on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is @IamVictoriaCraig. Craig is spelled like the boy's name, Craig. drop me a DM. I mean, I share a lot of content on my social media. That's where I share the most. That's kind of the like ins and outs of what's going on in my life as well, my stories. And I just love I love to have conversations going on in my DMs. I share a lot about our retreats and what you can experience there and plant medicines. And then also my website, which is www.iamvictoriacraig.com. On there, you'll see the Soul Rising Retreat page too, which has all of the information for our up and coming retreats and how you can apply for those. And then also on top of retreats, I do work in the online space, coaching and breath work. Obviously, we don't do plant medicine online. However, I can work with clients microdosing. And yeah, then just doing embodiment coaching and breath work too. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much. And I will link all of that in the show notes so you guys can connect with Victoria directly. Now, before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to share with listeners? No pressure whatsoever, but I do just like to open the floor if there's anything you want to say.
Just that you're never alone and that there is always support available for you. There is always, what I'm speaking to now is more, anyone that is really struggling right now, just please reach out. I've been there myself. It's a horrible place to be in, and just reach out and allow yourself to be supported, whether that's friends or family or professional help.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For speaking to me on Manda's Mindset. I super appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a really juicy conversation. I've loved it. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for tuning in to Manda's Mindset.